Hey, what's going on, everybody? The Brain Trust is back with another episode of uh, Black Military Talk, episode 82. Um, we'll be going over the Euro Naval Conference. Basically, they had a exhibition on Euro naval products out in Europe, for maritime security. So, without further ado, um, I'll start to share my screen. If you want to follow along, you can also see the description below the video. So this first video I'm going to look at right now is from Rafael, which is a European company for military applications. Um, what we're looking at right here is basically a torpedo defense system used for submarines to deploy decoys against incoming artillery, as well as sea to surface, sea to air, as well as sea to sea base applications for rocket artillery. These are supersonic weapons that the that maritime operations use in times of warfare. Very interesting things that they've come up with. Let me check the chat real quick. Make sure that anybody. So what we're looking at right here. Let me stop the video. It's something called an Iron Dome. Israel um, came up with the Iron Dome system as a way to prevent any sort of artillery attacks from what they consider to be the Palestinians, Hamas, namely. They accuse Hamas and many of these Palestinians of firing mortar shells and other, artillery into the state of Israel. And as a response, they came up with the Iron Dome, and the Iron Dome is a compilation of many other defensive, cybersecurity defensive, um, short to medium range, medium to long range missile deterrence, as well as um, just electronic warfare. And looking at this video, you can see right here that there's a small drone trying to penetrate the city, which we probably consider Tel Aviv, as the capital. And we see that the drone is defeated, and we also see that they transferred the same technology to their warships. I think mostly they have corvettes and maybe one or two frigates. These are supersonic missiles that are being fired off and have high accuracy. I'm gonna stop the video right here. This is a part of the multi-layer security fabric that they've developed with this whole sea dome system, or the Iron Dome system, and they've transferred it to their maritime operations. And just pausing the video for 1 second. This is a actual unmanned surface vehicle. meaning that it's a boat without a human operator. And what you're seeing right now is this boat is basically performing um, patrol exercises in their shallow waters, and it's actually armed with a guided missile system on the back, as well as 7.2 millimeter machine gun on the front, if I remember correctly. And what I find genius about this, this unmanned surface vehicle is that even if you tried to touch it, it's equipped with a water cannon, and the pressure from the water cannon would push any human being off of it, or even getting close to it. So even if you wanted to get it and grapple it by swimming close to it, it would actually push you away. So you wouldn't even be able to apprehend the boat if you wanted to, or take ownership of it for that matter. What else can I say about this? It's also capable of it's also capable of carrying more missiles than what it should. I don't see why you would need more. Um, the Typhoon multi launch system would give it a dozen or so rockets, and I don't see the necessity for something like that. But it does have that capability. And what you're looking at right here is again the torpedo system that used for submarines to as a decoy against incoming torpedoes. They actually have artificial intelligence built into them, which I find to be very interesting. And here we have the Typhoon 30 millimeter system from Rafael that can be attached to that unmanned surface vehicle, the USV that I spoke of earlier. That's a pretty powerful weapon. 30 millimeters is a lot for a cannon. So let me move on to the next video. I don't see anybody in the chat as of yet. Um, so this is the second video from the Euro Naval Festival. Um, and there's a product from Canadians called the Zodiac. Um, and the Zodiac is basically a brown water maritime security vessel. It's inflatable as well as yeah, it's inflatable as well as transportable. Basically, you would use this for as an interceptor, drug smuggling, all types of operations in close waters. Maybe something like a Coast Guard, maybe something like local police forces. But this is definitely something that military is actually looking at. If you look at the video, there's a ATGM on the side, basically a anti tank guided missile. So it was going on anti gravity. You have four outboard motors and a half dozen seats up in there, as well as two heavy machine guns on each side of the boat. And the product is called a Hurricane. So it has multiple configurations where you can have shield. It could be shielded or it could be unshielded, and it could be unmanned as well, from my understanding. So you wouldn't even need a human operator inside. Freelance Ronin, what's going on, man? This product is probably going to be something to watch, in the next 6 months or so. I believe this is going to be a product that a lot of countries are going to adopt. If not, even local state agencies will probably adopt something like this. Hey, what's going on, Young Grizzly? Keep it techie. What's going on? Yeah, this is definitely a interesting product. So you can see in the video right here, the all black version of it, used for French Navy. Uh, they're using this even out in out in blue water. So that shows you the capabilities that this interceptor has. Stop the video. One gun and two guns. Two heavy fire. I believe that's 20 mil, not 20 millimeter. 12.7 millimeter guns on the side, if I remember correctly. Yeah, freelance. I'm usually here with Lionel, but I don't know what Lionel is at the moment. So right now I'm just going to do it by myself, unless somebody else wants to get on. So this is the third video of the Euro Naval 2018 exposition. basically in this video they're going to be showcasing all the innovation and technologies that has been that's being presented on the floor. Um, if I just skip forward on some of this stuff. So what they're doing, what they're talking about right here, is essentially new aircraft carriers, new designs for aircraft carriers, new frigates, new corvettes, um, new new helicopter land LHPs. So these are items that have, and also new type of design for submarines. I don't think a lot of this stuff is even on the market yet, but what it sounds like to me is that people are trying to sell their products for the most part. New helicopters as well. I think that's pretty cool. So there's a company called Dow um, next to it. So they both came out with a product called a T-40, which is a 40 millimeter close-in weapon system used for safeguarding maritime patrol vessels. Uh,
So this is stuff. Hello, by the way.
hey, what's going on, brother?
Hey, brother. Um, so question about the hydrofoil looking or hydrofoil type speedboat that they had.
Uh,
That thing's
uh,
crazy in terms of like speed. Um, but where are they going to use that? So they're not. Are they using it in small canals or is it open water as just a straight drug trafficking interceptor or something like that?
it's meant for both.
Both. Okay. Wow. So even okay. So what they would cut off some of the engines or cut down the output?
What do you mean, in open water or in brown water?
Brown water.
No, that sucker just keep going. They don't have to actually change anything about the motors, because depending on how many people are in the vehicle and depending
Mm-hmm.
on what they're carrying, that would determine the amount of power that will be needed, right?
Mm. Yeah, they would just like open up the throttle or something like that, and pretty much it.
It depends on if they're going upstream up against current as well.
True. Yeah, like that black version of the boat itself, that was used by the French military. You were saying?
Yeah, that's a pretty slick product, man. I just
I'm
oh
I'm
shit, hold
looking at it, but like, what are the And I came in late, so if you said this already, I'll just go and watch the replay. But what are the
on.
changes? Are we talking really just they added newer engines? Because that design doesn't seem much newer than what I've seen before.
I believe the materials are different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe the materials are much different. I don't think it weighs anything, and it looks like it's mostly made of like composite and some other forms of rubber.
Oh, really? Wow, that's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense for the for the top portion of the boat, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right, yeah, especially around the sides and everything like that. I'm not sure, like the floaty device
If
looking
you
thing. So excuse me because I don't know the terms.
right, right, because if you're gonna take like a ship. If a Carnival cruise ship was to be hijacked by pirates or something to that effect, and
Mm,
you had to send out a force, then you would need something that's going to bump up against that cruise ship and take it from the
exactly.
bottom up.
Right, yeah. So like I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, even with stealth missions, how do you think this boat would fare, especially with larger engines like that? Or is it the same thing? You throttle it accordingly.
I think you just throttle it accordingly. From all the videos I've seen of it,
Hmm.
doesn't look like they changed very much in terms of the outboard motors.
Hmm. Okay. So the biggest thing is like possibly material changes and pretty much construction or the materials that it's constructed out of. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, from what it sounds like to me.
All right. Sorry, if you want to move on to the next thing, or uh, I guess I'll just
I,
listen.
I was actually Yeah, I was actually in the middle of the innovation portion of it. I was just talking about the 40 millimeter close-in weapon system that was being displayed by Nexter and Dallas, which we
Yeah,
what we're
so
looking at right here.
yeah, I saw the gentleman. He was at like almost like a virtual command station, something out of Star Wars, where I mean, yeah, like he's not in front, he's not actually holding the gun, and I'm sure that's been the case for a while now. But they have a camera on the gun, and the person's just in the control room running it.
Right, and also because it can switch different ammunitions, air bursts for for drones and different ammunition for incoming incoming vehicles.
Hmm. That's cool, man. Because like it really it makes sense, and it's kind of more in line with the next generation of uh, innovation in army and actually of army recruits because these kids that are coming in are like, I used to play Black Ops 3, you know, I got the military pack or something like that, whatever they downloaded, right? So
They
it
actually,
really kind of gamifies it.
well, that they actually work with the people who make Call of Duty.
You see what I'm
The
saying?
military
Like,
actually,
and it's like
yeah,
these
that's
kids
where they
have
go.
been desensitized. Hmm.
No, I was just going to say that the military actually works with them on simulations and things like that. So, the people who make Call of Duty actually consult with the military, and the military actually consults with them on players, right? So they can do their recruiting that way. They don't have to go to the NFL or do any real advertising
Hmm.
campaigns. You go pull them right from there, because that's
Oh,
exactly what they're going to be doing is using the
from the
joystick.
freaking leader charts. This is
Yeah,
Gamers End, like real life. That's a great movie, by the way.
right.
If no one's ever watched it, Gamers End, like, or I think an Ender's Game actually.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah, Ender's Game. I've watched that movie twice already, and I could definitely watch it a third time. I'll probably watch it again after this. It's up there with Layer Cake for me. But even in that movie, for anybody that doesn't know, like the kid think he's like really good at games, and he actually no, they recruited children, and like it was a virtual like a whole army attack force, so they would control everything remotely. And then in that movie, at the end of the movie, he thinks that he's still playing a game or doing simulations, but the entire time fighting he's actually fighting the enemy force. So which is really cool, and I kind of gave away the ending of the movie, but it's a really really good movie because he just doesn't know.
Yeah. So when we're looking at right here, there's a missile designed by Saab, which is a um, land to land based missile or sea to land based missile. It's a cruise missile.
Well, Saab has always been in aeronautics, right? I mean, that's how they started.
Hmm. Born from jets. I think that's the model. I think that was the car's model. But that's that's completely different completely different company, but yeah, they've always been involved in aeronautics and in defense systems. But what we're seeing right here is just their sea-based maritime weapons.
Now, Mike, I mean, you guys are, well, it's called more well versed in this. I'm a student in this. Um, Now, how often are these things actually really used? That we know about as far as in the public sector or public eye. Um, like they're making all these. We're not in war, but they're making all these innovations. Or is that not totally the focus? Like eventually they want to get to consumer side of it,
In
or not
terms of
missiles.
weapons, or you mean in terms of weapons, or what?
Well, we know that weapon techno. I'll rephrase the question. We know that weapon technology somehow, some way, makes it into the consumer's hand in terms of the advancements, right? But now these things aren't really being like. I would say that these things aren't really being used because we're not in wartime. Um, but is that kind of like a small-minded view because the U.S. is not totally in wartime? Like they're making all these advancements for what? Is a simple question.
You have to replace different, aging hardware,
Mm,
depending on which hardware it is, right, and depending on how layered your nation state security is. So a lot of those missiles that don't get used, they age and they need to be used at some point. Either you're gonna use it for testing, or you're gonna use it in war. But once you use it, it's been used, right?
right,
So what happens when you use up all your artillery, or your artillery becomes aged and it needs to be replaced?
right. Just doesn't make any sense to
That's one of the problems. Yeah, that's one of the problems that the United States has, right? So they need an enemy to go to war with in order to justify upgrading their military every time. And when they fired those cruise missiles into Syria, those are very old cruise missiles. Those are not new. Those are pretty old in military terms, especially in technology terms.
right. So in terms of depreciating assets, they had to just write this one off.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get rid of them. And you need a target. So why not? It's a two for one to use them on somebody rather than to not use them at all.
Right.
Syria, yeah, Syria just happened to be one. I like this portable submarine that is used for one man to use for penetrating under certain surfaces, shallow rocks and things like that, and waters.
James Bond coming to life, really.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm pretty sure it's not cheap, but it's still innovative in my opinion. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to actually go underwater with a device that hasn't fully been tested, or for a mission that you can't really quantify in terms of what the risk and reward is going to be for.
Right. Oh wow! So you're fully enclosed in that thing. It's really cool. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's.
oh, go ahead.
Mhm. No, go ahead.
I usually actually do like the some of the military tech that you see because it's kind of cool. I'm a James Bond kid. That's what I grew up on. So
Hmm.
I like seeing this. This is really cool because I'm like looking at this and I'm like, oh, James Bond had that, like something like it. And I think it's good because it actually, oh wow, so it's like a two-man deal too. Um, it's really cool because you can actually see how this is useful in terms of the tech that comes out of it that spins off from it and how that
Hmm.
gets into the consumer markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at it from a black man's perspective in terms of how can we get into a market like this? How do we penetrate and capitalize on these opportunities?
Mm.
You know, the Jamaican military could use an upgrade, in my opinion.
Yes, yes, we could. Yes. If they could, pay for the Chinese, pay for these toll roads that they got in there.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, pay for that first. Yeah, that's a touchy subject. I was just thinking. I was talking to somebody about that today.
Hmm.
But, anyways,
Yeah. Um, this is a landing craft that is used for doing deployments on onto beaches.
well,
I think that is I think that is really cool that you can pack all these tanks and everything else onto it. And I mean, looking at the video, just trucks and all types of vehicles that can be packed on it.
yeah, it's like a beefy ass ferry.
Hmm.
Now, even with this being military talk, and I know you guys have the space talk as well. What are do you guys talk about space military? I don't get to watch that stream as much, or I don't watch that stream as much. Not that I don't get to. But do you guys talk about the military improvements in space exploration or space warfare, if anything?
We've covered in geopolitics more than space and technology, only because it's more of a geopolitical strategy to to create a whole entire space fleet. And I think we talked about this maybe earlier in the week, but the Russians actually coined their air force the aerospace forces. So they put emphasis behind aerospace to determine where they stand in regards to defending all their satellites and everything else and beyond. Whereas the United States didn't really they never coined it that, right? They never really had a true term and definition to define what it is that they're defending outside of just the Air Force itself. Now,
Right.
my understanding is that NASA was supposed to be, the safeguards of United States space exploration and space security. But it seems to me like the Air Force has they share it with the Air Force, so that's why I think there's a big difference.
Right. Well, if I was to, when I think of what you just said and process it, I've always thought as NASA as the nerds, and then the Navy and or the Air Force as the actual jocks that'll go out and do it, and they just work in tandem.
Hmm.
Like they're the space
They don't seem
science
yeah
guys.
they don't seem to communicate with each other because if you remember what Trump said, he when he announced that there would be a space force, um, the director of NASA actually came out and endorsed him on it. Now, if
Hmm.
NASA has nothing to do with it, why would the director come out and actually endorse it unless they were going to get something out of it, right? So NASA needs a
Hmm.
new mission because they're not using they're not launching as much and they're not getting the same investment from the government, right? The government is basically stopped subsidizing most of their operations. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so what other way would you be able to get that sort of investment from the government or get the funding from the government? They would have to actually have some kind of space force.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because I mean, if I were ever looked at the Air Force, they're the ones that will weaponize this technology, but they also make a lot of the technology in house as well. And you know, uh, NASA would be the ones that would just actually come up with it in terms of, hey, this is a cool idea, and then the Air Force Navy would be like, oh yeah, that is a cool idea. Let's turn it into a weapon.
Mhm.
So that's how I kind of see it. But yeah,
What was I discussing here?
yeah, you had a fifth video.
Oh, yeah, anti-submarine warfare. That the helicopter we just glimpsed right by was anti-submarine helicopter.
Anti-submarine, like, so it does it have advanced sonar? Is what we're talking about, and detection, and then like piercing, or like armor piercing, hole piercing missiles.
It those are torpedoes. So they just drop the torpedoes where they can find the where they think the sub is, and then basically
What you mean?
let the summer let the torpedoes go down and chase it down.
Right.
And the only reason I'm speaking about this because I saw whatchamacallit last night, which is Hunter Killer, which is I think is a very good movie. If you are not familiar with geopolitics between Russia and the United States and submarine warfare, that is an excellent movie to watch. It brings you up to speed really fast.
Let me
Yeah, the
check.
video that what we're looking at right now in the video is you know sixth generation fighter jet, as well as an aircraft carrier to house most of these new fighter jets that they're talking about.
Whoa. Question: how long does it take to usually build these type of these carriers?
I think the longest time is like 7 years or something like that.
Mm. And then how do they deal with the technological advancements in between that time? They just start building new ships.
What do you mean?
For instance, if there's an improvement of some sort in design or flaws are found or anything like that, do they say, okay, we'll just save it for the next time, next go round?
Mm,
While they're building, it's like
they
seven
probably
years, you know?
well once they draft it out, it's already done. They already have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be, right? So they're not going to change it in the middle of building of it just because a new AMD or Intel processor came out. They're not going to do that.
Okay, good point. Good point.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. That's stuff that can be upgraded after the fact, not before the fact.
Okay. That's cool to know.
Hmm.
So, like, it's a bit
Yeah,
of a modular design where you could just kind of stick anything in.
I wouldn't say it's modular, but it does take a lot of testing. You have to remember that this has to go on the water for X amount of years. So if you have a processor or something like that that burns up because it has a poor fabrication or it was a bad batch of processes, and you leave that thing, that aircraft carrier, stuck in the middle of water, that's going to suck.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, they can't just overclock it to get more, performance. So that stuff stays pretty static.
Well, yeah, like I would say, like, I guess the word modular in this sense is like they could just replace it with something else or upgrade it as they need to. They just design it in a way that it's easily upgradable,
A
if that
lot of
makes
those
sense.
warships are still using. A lot of those warships are still using Windows XP.
I mean, darn. Oh, God. Well, it's stable.
Well, they don't have any choice, right? When it was designed, that's the way it was designed. 10, 15 years ago. That's just what it was.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have more than enough developers that are still writing code for it, so it's not a huge deal. And I mean, if we're talking advancements, some of the advancements for Windows XP to Windows 10, in some cases, it's just UI based. Yeah, there are like serious kernel changes, but at the same time, sometimes what it is that they rewrite the same code in a different fashion.
Right, well, when your weapon systems and your engine management and your HVAC systems are all designed around that 32-bit kernel, and everything's
Hmm.
64-bit now, it's kind of hard for you to make those drastic changes. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that's where the new ships come in. I can understand that.
mhm.
Excuse my ignorance.
Or maybe not even yeah, and maybe not even new ships. You may end up having to um, upgrade every piece of system in there and run all types of a battery of tests. I mean, battery of tests can probably take 2 or 3 years. They can do all that stuff onshore and do all the testing there, and then they can decide whether or not they're going to retrofit it.
Mm. What are your thoughts about the use of Linux and its spread in the military space?
What do you mean?
Um, like you say Windows XP, but it's like, don't they have, wouldn't when Linux in a lot of cases be a little bit more uh, well, not a little bit, but it'd be more efficient. It's classically has been, and especially in the consumer retail and even big data and larger system space, like your Googles and your Facebook. They're making huge upgrades in terms of uh, their internal systems, and
Mhm.
at the core of that is the Linux kernel. Like I've been reading
Right.
about the Facebook six pack switches and the backpack switches.
Mhm. Well, a lot of Linux doesn't have always have the drivers available for the hardware. So your hardware has to be specifically designed around that or chosen around whatever Linux can support. Whereas with Windows, you know it's supported because it's already has driver signatures.
Now, isn't support a matter of, hey, we're designing it for Linux as the chip manufacturer like your Qualcomm's or Nvidia, what's it called, AMD.
It has more to do with most when most hardware that you see operating on Windows was designed around Windows, whereas Linux is just an afterthought, right? Linux only has
Mm.
less than
Hmm.
10% of the desktop market, so you don't design your hardware to work with Linux. You have to make Linux work with the hardware, and that becomes
Hmm.
cumbersome because um, unless you can take specific pieces of hardware and make it and make a driver just for that, um,
Hmm.
it's usually not that functional.
Right.
I mean, you can download Ubuntu right now and just slap it on a laptop. Okay, you got it to boot up and you got it to work for the time being. But what happens when you start building out military applications for it? And X Windows crashes or something like that because the driver was poorly written or it just doesn't support this or that or it has this unseen bug. An unseen bug on a warship is unacceptable. An unseen bug inside of in someone's house in a consumer's house may be fine. You can shut down the system and then
Hmm.
fire up another one, but can't do that on the warship. So that's probably why you don't see too much Linux support in terms of the military.
Well, I think you put it very well with the comment of it's an afterthought. To me, at
Mhm.
least. Like if it's an afterthought, then I mean, it just totally makes sense. Um, I'm just seeing so much more. Maybe it's just I don't know. I'm a Linux fanboy, so that's kind of where that's
Mhm.
coming from. Like I'm seeing. I've been reading a lot more again about the Facebook switching platform and their open network switching platform. Um,
Mhm.
and even Google's switching platform. And they're all based on the Linux kernel. They have their own little mini servers that are doing all types of things in there. They're taking shots at Cisco and all this other stuff. But you're seeing these advancements happen because at its core, they're using Linux and they're making improvements for it. And they're making systems around it that are doing the things that you know, your larger vendors aren't doing. It's an afterthought for them too. Like it's Cisco makes a product that is good, and it's good for more. It's good for almost like a Swiss Army knife. It's good for a lot of people, but it may not be good just for, say, specifically Google, so on and so forth. Sorry for the tangent. It's just I'm like looking at this and I'm like, why is the Navy using this?
Well, Navy, I would say the full military branch.
Mm, thank you.
It's yeah, the full military branch is not 100. They want what's easy and what works for them.
Right.
Windows works, and Microsoft is going to be on tap. If you're paying them $1 million for support, they're showing up commandos onto your warship saying, "I can fix it."
Right. 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 And I think
I don't
this
know.
is
I mean, Red Hat is the biggest Linux distribution in the United States. So in terms of
hmm
commercial space,
hmm yeah,
I don't. Go ahead.
I think this will change, or sorry, I'm also hoping it'll change as well with the new generation of your programmers and kids that are coming up, kind of like the whole gamification of warship and battle and stuff like that.
Mhm. I don't know if it will because a lot of artificial intelligence that's being implemented into a lot of these products requires less and less people to be involved. I think we covered this last week on one of our military hangouts that the Russians are basically talking about automating their whole entire military, at least a good portion of it.
Right, and I think, well, even I was just before I jumped on the stream, I was watching a video. Shoot, I think it's like how to think like a programmer, and the guy said, he had a very very good way of doing this, an analogy of sorts or way of explaining this. And he said, look at it, take a rock. In this case, in the talk, he was using a shoe, and he was like, all right, cool. So what are the specs on your laptop? And the guy said, hey, it's a core this, how many ever gigs of RAM, gaming laptop, so on and so forth. And the guy was like, what's the difference between my shoe and the computer? And the guy was like, well, it's this. He's like, nothing. The big difference is the person behind it. And I think even with all of this, before until AI gets to the point where it starts to write itself or gets better at writing itself, I should say, um, you know, there's the big difference is the people that are actually putting in the code, the imagination of what to do next.
Hmm. Let me just cover this last piece real quick.
Yes.
So in this part of the video, they have a new anti-submarine Airbus jet. So it's a A320 Neo, specially designed for this application. It has four pylons on the side, Hellfire missiles, as well as unguided missiles. And then in the rear, there's a torpedo bomb bay, infrared cameras, radars, satellite communications on the top.
So they
The
fit so
ability
many
to
things in.
listen, yeah, the ability to listen to the water with acoustic microphones to see if there's some submarines in the water. Um, and we can see right here. I want to pause the video real quick. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight torpedoes that fall at the back of the back of the hatch of the warplane to take down submarines in the water, which I find to be very interesting. If you have a plane that big moving at such rate of speed, you got to get that right if you're going to drop those torpedoes off.
What's the rate of speed on this? Is it closer to your commercial airliners, or is it a little bit slower because of the what it's carrying?
Now, I think it's the same speed as a commercial airliner, but it must be considerably lighter because it doesn't really have anything in it.
Seats and such, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's all computers inside there.
Because I was just thinking to myself, I was like, they're fitting a lot on these planes, but they're huge planes now already. So when you take
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff off, they're gonna in the even in the baggage section, or what would be the baggage section, you got they're armed to the teeth.
That's where all their radars and satellite and satcom links are.
Mm.
So that's the last video. I think I got one. Actually, I do have one more. Just got a couple more. We'll probably go for another hour or so. I had this in my email for quite some time. I think this is probably yeah, since early in the month, but kept forgetting to bring this up. Northrop Grumman shows off shipping container launch anti-radiation missile concept.
Gotta use them shipping containers. They're not just homes, people.
Oh yeah,
That's so stealth
not your
too.
tiny house. Not
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just not your tiny house. It's a tiny silo.
Well, if you think about it, um, if you were to penetrate someone's waters, let's say the United States wanted to penetrate China, or China wanted to penetrate the United States
Hmm.
with this cargo fleet, um, and you have what on a cargo ship, you probably have maybe 800 to 1,000 shipping containers.
Hmm.
You get a
Super
dozen
Ninja.
of those shipping containers on there. You get a dozen of those shipping containers on there. You can penetrate and take down a nation state pretty easily.
Yeah, serious Trojan horses by sea.
Absolutely.
Trojan
Hmm.
seahorses.
Something like that. But yeah, that's a pretty slick design. And on top of the fact that you can put this on the back of a what do you call that? A flatbed truck. So you wouldn't even
Mm,
have to retrofit or do anything to it. You can just slap it on there in a matter of seconds with a
yeah,
crane, pop it on there, or even a tow truck with a winch, pull it on there, and then take off and go, and then hit the battlefield and set up shop.
yeah. Put it on any LTE network for remote control. And how many trucks drive by, the White House? Oh, you know what? I'm gonna get the stream taken down. I'm gonna get the stream
No,
taken
no,
down.
no, 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 no.
Freaking, they're gonna call me a
They, they,
BIE or
they,
something.
DIC. No,
Right.
no, but this would be excellent inside. If I was a Middle East leader and I wanted to neatly secure and pack my artillery, you could actually do that with a shipping container like that.
That's wild. That's, I mean, it's
Yeah,
so it's so creative and innovative. It's just scary though. But like, you can you can do so many things with those shipping containers, and it's like you said, it's stealth. It's absolutely stealth.
hmm I dropped a link in the chat for people who want to see it for themselves. Let me look over the. look over this one more time. Let me do one more. C Boogie sent this one in for the new SR-72 Blackbird. This one is from the National Interest. A Mach 6 capable jet, or even faster than Mach 6, which is relatively fast for itself. I'll drop this one in the chat as well so that people can go see it for themselves.
It said something. It mentioned something about slide rules. What is that exactly? I don't understand that terminology.
They use slide rules to design it. This is before computers.
Oh. Okay.
To get
I have to
accuracy
look.
on it.
Oh, okay. So I looked it up. The slide rule, also known colloquially in the United States as slipstick, is a mechanical analog computer. The slide rule is used primarily for multiplication and division, also for functions such as exponents, roots, logarithms, trigonometry, but typically not for addition or subtraction. So more or less advanced. Oh, a slide rule. Okay, I've seen one of those before.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Excuse me. I've never had to really use one of them, but I've seen them before.
Yeah, they replaced them with Texas Instruments calculators.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, the graphing calculator.
Now, from a betting man, I would say that the U.S. military can actually make this an unmanned vehicle, basically a drone, if they wanted to. If they really wanted to hit anything above Mach 6 without hurting anybody,
Mm.
hurting your pilot, you can definitely make it unmanned.
So your pilot in this case is the bottleneck in terms of control and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why couldn't they? What do you think, if anything, could hold them back from making this a drone? Compute power, or is that not a problem? I would think not.
It's probably more. It probably has to do more with mechanics, getting the right engine, um, getting it stable enough. I mean, the F-35 has a lot of problems in itself, right? I mean, that thing has so many problems. They have to, bring it offline. They crashed one in South Carolina last week, so that should tell you how difficult it is to get something like that working.
And that's a completely unmanned jet.
No, it's not, but it's
Oh,
the most advanced jet that they do have, right? You try to go one step further, and you haven't even resolved most of the issues on the previous iterations.
yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
beefy jet though. That almost looks like a stealth bomber for real. Just the
It was
look.
a stealth. It was a stealth plane at one point.
Oh,
It could outrun every missile that was fired at it. So That's what it was used for.
Whoa, that's fast.
Yeah, that's that. It was definitely a plane of its time. Definitely a plane of its time. We should probably do a hangout just on that alone.
Um, I don't know much about it, so if you want to drop some information now, that'd be great. After you're done with your articles, maybe
On the SR-71.
the F-35 or the F-35, F, yeah,
Oh, the F-35.
yeah.
We kind of covered a little bit of it last week, but the F-35 is a multi-role fighter jet that was cost hundreds of billions of dollars to design, and it really does not work very well. Last week or the week before last, they had a crash in South Carolina. I think one of the fuel pumps or something like that failed, and the pilot had to bail out and crash. Not sure if he survived or not. So
Mm.
everybody else who owns that F-35, United States allies, they had to, ground all
Recall
their
it.
planes. Well, they had to
Uh,
ground them all and inspect them. And when you're talking about grounding a whole bunch of planes that cost hundreds of billions of dollars to be pumped into it, it makes you wonder if if the thing even really works, because it hasn't been
well,
really used in combat yet.
they're using Windows XP, man. I'm just saying. Maybe this is switch to Linux. I like jab. I like jab.
Yeah. No, I would say they're probably using what do you call that, Windows Millennium Edition, M8.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Oh
Yeah.
goodness, that's crazy. But I honestly, again, I'm seeing so much in terms of what they're doing with switches and other devices and making them complete servers. Even your own printer, like the amount of the technological advance just to even have your printer with a web server amazes me. So imagine what they could be doing or will be doing in terms of these jets and things like that, and all the even my Roku TVs. I made a video about that recently where I can control Roku TVs with a script, just doing settings changes and automating that whole process. So that's on a freaking TV, like, and again, that's years after what they're doing in the military, of course. We're years behind.
Right. Right. And I don't think it's uncommon that the military would actually adopt some consumer electronics. I mean, we saw what they've done in um in Syria with these toy drones, trying to attack Russian bases with them. So let me get to this one last article. China is testing a ramjet-powered carrier killer missile.
Mm.
This one is from Foxtrot Alpha. Jalopnik.
Ramjet, like, does it have a Hemi in it?
I think so. Yeah, the it picks up speed using that ramjet. That's how we. Oh, come on. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff that the Chinese are coming out with. They are coming to a point where they are basically a formidable force in terms of maritime security. I'll also drop this link in the chat as well.
Jedi Focus is greeting snobs.
Yeah, it's a very short night, man. Nobody really joined the panel like they do any other time. So I'll probably end this at 10 o'clock if you guys don't have anything else that you want to discuss. Although I can make the announcement now, um, we will have a Black IT Summit next week.
Oh
So
wow,
you guys should look, yeah, you guys should look out for the updates coming out through the channel.
that's really cool. What day are you gonna have that?
It should be Saturday.
Saturday. Oh, okay, cool. What time? Like set? You guys? Do you start at 7 for this stream?
But we haven't figured out a time as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably join. What's it called? After 8 or so, because I come to my night job, and that's usually when I get to listen to this stuff.
Okay.
So in fact, I go through all the emails. That's really cool, though. Yeah, that'd be really cool because I'm seeing like a lot of stuff that's going on and things that I'm doing. I'm almost finished with the latest project I've been working on, which is a digital advertising, like a simple digital advertising platform, and it just uses Roku TVs and Raspberry Pis, and it has a decent web interface and then a back end for adding pictures, videos, or whatever. So I'm probably going to release version like zero point 0.5, um, and then put it in my salon um, by next week. Yeah, by next week.
Let's see what's going on in the chat. What did freelance Ronin just say? I also just built a Nas with an old Droid HC1. A Nas? What does he like? Is he illmatic or something?
You know what he means.
Does he freestyle? Is he from New York? What is it?
Overjoyed? Yeah, wonder what operating system you use for that. Like, so what do you use for? Oh, you built the NAS out of that? Hmm, that's kind of cool. Yeah, so like, oh, okay, I didn't know they had something like this. So really, you just hook the hard drive directly to it, and then you can make that into a direct a NAS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not gonna lie though. Um, like using a NAS, I usually use something a little bit more robust because I believe in the redundancy and having all those things in place. So I usually like to use something like FreeNAS or something like that, um, for something like that. But this is really cool because you could just use one drive and then I guess go from there and replace it. But it's kind of like building. Pretty much what he built is like the Western Digital, or what that's disrupting, I could say, is the Western Digital cloud backup, or my cloud backup drive that has network capabilities, and it's just a single hard drive. So that's really kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the what's it called? What's another? I use a Synology right now for my NAS at home, and that has like 4 drives and does everything. And it's actually really, really like, you can tell that it has a Linux kernel on it, and they're doing a lot of development with that device. Because with the Synology devices, and if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I don't know. Somebody correct me in the chat. But with the Synology devices, you can install like a lot of different applications. They have a good amount of updates. Um, and I've deployed them at quite a few customer sites, the smaller ones, and they've actually done fairly well there. And you can have the really small ones that take laptop hard drives and hook those up to a network, and I think the small ones even have dual LAN. So you can do all types of, you can hook it up to multiple LANs, and then I believe you can actually do load balancing on those as well. So you can get up to about 2 gigs to the switch, which is really, really nice, even for a small platform.
Yeah, I used to use a QNAP.
QNAP. Yeah, my friend swears, my colleague of mine swears by those. Like, he loves QNAPs.
Yeah, because the support is there. Like, the support works. But I don't want to deviate this into a tech
Oh,
hangout. Um, so thank you all for joining us.
I'm a talk.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. We'll be back on Monday with Space and Technology, episode 83. And be on the lookout for the email updates for the Black IT Summit. Thank you, Young Grizzly, for joining us, being a facilitator. And
Yeah,
we
man.
are out.
Appreciate it. Peace.